And welcome to the Football 360 Show, the fastest hour of football talk on the planet. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year to everybody out there. 'Tis the season. I am JP Rock. He is Matt Biermann. There's our socials on there. JP Rock MO on X. JP Rock Scouts You on the gram, and Elite Football on X, Elite Football Academy on the gram for Mr. Biermann right there.
Yes,
And
sir.
lots of football stuff. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us. Get a bunch of them all the time. And past few weeks that we've been here, there's been a bunch of questions about stuff. So always love to hear the questions. Always love to answer the questions because we're the answer mans, correct, Mr. Biermann?
Yes, we are. We got a little technical difficulty here.
That's fine. I'll vamp a little
Yeah.
bit while you're doing your thing. Lots of stuff going on. I mean, football season, high school football season's over. For the regular season for professional college football is over, right? There's a lot of off-season free agent stuff
Yeah.
going on, and front what do they call it?
Oh,
The front office stuff
the college football stuff right now is
going
just
on.
off the charts.
It's the wild west out there.
Yes.
It is 100%. And you want to know what? Somebody said this, and I really didn't think about it, but I think the NCAA is doing this on purpose because they're like, you want to try to tell us you want this? You want here.
Do it all.
Do it all. Let it go.
Yeah. Don't chew. Just swallow everything all at once.
Yeah. See how everybody likes this. How you like me now, right? That's their thing because, I mean, it is crazy. There's stuff going on daily that in years past, it would be the death penalty for a program.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And now it's just so out in the open and just so there. And kids are, I mean, it's one and done. Right. I mean, look at Mizzou's situation with Williams Nwaneri, and we didn't get a chance to talk about that one. I'm not surprised. I know Big Will. He was at Oklahoma. He committed to Oklahoma first.
Yep.
Right. And then it was open, and then it was who's it going to be? And I mean, it is professional football, right? It is a business.
Right.
He's out there making business decisions, and it really makes me wonder as a fan, because I'm a fan of college football in general. I'm not a team specific fan. I don't know if
I would agree with that.
I don't know if you're necessarily. I mean, we root for the local guys. We want everybody to do well. However, as a fan, as a diehard fan, how are you feeling? And that'd be a good question to the viewers and listeners today. How are you feeling as a fan? Because how do you get?
I don't think most of them even realize like how much in flux it really is at this point. Because you look at Mizzou, they stayed stable the last couple years and pretty
probably
well.
Better than everybody, yeah.
And now they're caught in a real bad situation. They lost their quarterback, right? So stability's gone.
Their number one guy they wanted
gone.
Went to another place. They were going to get in the portal.
So the next guy they're looking at, Mendoza out of Cal.
Yeah.
He has 2 years left. So if he comes in, is that going to scare off your 5-star freshman?
Correct.
Right.
And people in the future. And I mean, Mendoza is going to be in high demand. I'm here in Miami. I'm here in Indiana. I'm sure new coach at Purdue is probably, looking at that. Another guy, is his name Ryan Brown, a transfer from Purdue.
Yeah.
Who, Mizzou is kind of like, taking a little look at there. He might go back to Purdue now that Coach Odom's there, or I mean, it's moving fast and furious out there.
And there's money flying left and right.
Big money. And we were hearing numbers like, 500,000 for a backup, you know?
Oh, easily.
You a starter, a Mendoza, you're talking, you better pony up 1.5, 2 million.
So that brings us to an interesting talk, because a lot of what's going on is there's money involved. Obviously, there's the NIL component, and now there's this new house settlement that they have, the NCAA versus house, or house versus NCAA, and which is then dictating the amount of money that they're going to now have to give. So, like Mizzou's a full opt-in school. They're going to be $22 million. They're going to pay. That's going to go to the football players, basketball players, male and female, right? So let's just call it 105 scholarships, roughly $18 million divvied up. From what I'm hearing, how it's going to work is each school obviously can decide how they want to pay that money out, right? So, you're going to share it with the players. I would imagine
it's not going to be even.
There's got to be a baseline. There's got to be, everybody's getting some component of that money, right? And so they got to get paid something, right?
Yeah.
But there's going to be a scenario where, hey, X percent of money is allocated to this position, X percent allocated to this position,
just like the NFL.
So, what I've been told by a couple different people is you're looking at allocations for quarterbacks in the 18 to 24% range.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the linemen, 18, 20% range. I've seen, where receivers, which you think would be a super high level.
Yeah.
Not nearly as what more in the 10% range, right? So then you start like doing your math, linebackers, DBs, kickers, punters, all that stuff. It's a very interesting take, but the lion's share of any one group, because it's a smaller group, is the quarterbacks. That's who's going to get paid first and foremost, because if you don't have that,
the whole thing runs through the quarterback.
It does. And that's why it's interesting to see that, because we've always known that, and there's going to be a reckoning when you have your starter's going to make $1.5 million to $2 million probably. The backup's probably the number 2 is probably $600,000, and then the other 2 guys are probably getting $400,000 or $500,000.
Yeah,
however it shakes out, but
right.
somewhere in that range. And what's really interesting is I don't understand why people have not figured out like why people are leaving. Like fans are upset, and it's like, you're dealing with kids who do not communicate all that well, right?
Right.
They have people in their ear that are now the agents that are like now going in and starting to negotiate these.
You have a
deals
lot
for
of
them.
agents out there now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of money that's involved, right? And that was the agents swooping in, right, and but there's a lot of money involved, right? And so and unfortunately, it's not like you're just calling up and saying, hey, we're interested in going there. There's somebody negotiating. Well, if they negotiated in your behalf, that money, the till is running, right? You're either paying them a fee or you're getting a percentage, right? And so we've heard NFL's what 2.5%, 3% is what is the maximum an agent, an NFLPA agent can take from a contract. We're hearing some of these kids, they're they're losing out on 5 up to 25%,
right? Because
which is a ripoff.
They don't know what they don't know,
and you got people that it's just 5%. Well,
and the other fascinating thing is a lot of this is going on way before the portal announcement, right?
Way before.
There's people. I mean, it's not just like free agency and the portal and everybody's deciding. I mean, you have what would be considering possibly tampering.
Oh,
okay. And I'm just gonna say that there's no proof. But I mean, you know what you know, and you hear what you hear. There's a lot of rumors of people. I mean, there are guys who are just like, I'm announcing for the portal. Don't contact me.
Yeah.
So what
that means?
What's that?
Well, I can tell you, like, we get phone calls, right? And people will ask, like, hey, such and such school looking for stuff, right? If you have conversations with coaches, you can have those conversations in a very high level.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like, there's people like I would never, and I know you wouldn't, I'm never going to like try and leverage like something like that, like for your own gain. Like that's like, it's between the kid and the school, right? I mean, I have no problem having high level conversations. I've had numerous coaches call, say, hey, right before the portal opened, hey, keep us in mind because they're managing too all these different guys, right? And I can tell you a real world story where I was talking to a guy at a Power 4 school the other day, and I gave him 2 kids' names that I haven't talked to in a while, but I thought would be transfer portal guys at some point, if not this season, next season.
They're all transfer portal guys.
Yeah. So what was interesting is I got a phone call yesterday. Say, hey, one of the kids we were talking about actually went into the portal. And he's like, hey, he's like, you called that. I was like, well, I honestly thought it would be next year, but he did it this year.
Yep.
Well, it was a coaching change. So the coaching staff got fired. And so now he's able to go do what? He can go out into the portal and see what's out there. And a lot of times with the coaching changes, that's a really good time to do it because when the new coach comes in, you can reestablish yourself with them since you're already there on campus. But if you find something better in the interim, take off.
Right.
Because they haven't even hired a coach at this school yet. So,
and that's a tough call too, because do you give the new coach a chance? Do you give the new staff a chance? Or are you going to miss your window of opportunity? Because there's some guys out there that we know of, and that's what they're dealing with. Coaching change, new coach is like, hey, stay here. You can, but he's also working to bring in his own guys.
Correct.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Well, that guy comes
they want to stack players, right?
Yep.
For various reasons. So, I mean, I guess, like you say, it's all about the negotiation. It's all
100%.
about what are you gonna pay? Are you gonna pay me more here? Are you gonna pay me more there? So back to my original thought, as far as fans go, how do you develop that devotion to a team when you have a revolving door team, right? Because in the past with recruiting, you knew what you got. You looked forward to each recruiting year. You signed your class. There's guys who like me and you who make your own depth chart right at home. And I did since I was a kid. Okay, well, now we got these guys. You can't do that anymore. You cannot count on any particular player
than that season,
or players.
That one
more
season,
than one season.
Or as we saw this year, people got upset and left in season once they played their 4 games and to
they
preserve that extra
deal.
year.
Yeah.
So, but to your point, I don't understand the flow of it because it seems a little chaotic. I understand why it's happening. I don't understand like the rapid need for people to move when you and I both know moving somewhere sometimes can be absolutely a horrible decision, right? It's like, and I don't know if it's like part of like the psyche of like today's youth, like where it's like, hey, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go. And it's like, I mean, I haven't really thought this out, but to be honest with you, I think you and I both know that there's a ton of kids that really love the recruiting process.
Yeah.
And this gives them an opportunity to relive it again and go through it and have people fighting over them. And so now you get to do this every year.
So 5 years, 5 years you get to do it?
Yeah. I mean, you got
come at me
you got
year?
5 years. And so, a lot of guys are entering into that portal and they have no idea that their career is ending or they're going to go into a worse situation than they were in.
Yeah.
You always got to be careful what you ask for, right? So
lateral move, backward move. I mean, it's you don't move for the sake of moving. And I think there's a bunch of guys out there doing that. There's an instant gratification. It is a lot of younger people. They want that instant gratification.
And I think so. The people in their ear, probably are a little bit immature when it comes to like finances and things like that. Where it's like, well, yeah, you got to go get your bag. Well, yeah. Define what that is. If you can stay here in a state like Missouri, or you're in Florida, or you're going somewhere that the tax implications are higher, right? If you're getting paid,
nobody's thinking along those lines.
You got to, you should.
Well, yeah,
right.
But
I mean, but again, do you think those agents are looking out for them? Absolutely not. They're just trying to find the best deal. So, to me, I think if you're a high level player, there's really no need to have an agent in the sense of, like finding opportunities. Yes, maybe negotiating a deal, but a lot of that's going to come down to the transparency of the coaching staff. Like, hey, they can't play too many games because they know these kids talk. This is not a traditional situation where you've signed an NDA and you're not supposed to disclose how much money you're making, right? Like what's going to be really interesting is that these public universities, they're going to have to disclose what each kid's making.
Oh yeah.
Like it's not a secret.
Yeah.
These are not minors. They're adults.
Yeah.
They're employees of the school now or being paid as employees.
Right.
It's going to be really interesting.
That's until the big money outsiders come and buy the team.
So yeah, I sent you the clip of.
Did you send it to Joe?
You know what? I can send it to Joe.
Yeah, go ahead and send it to Joe. But
yeah,
but it's funny because you and I had talked about it last year
yep.
when we saw what was moving and when we first brought up how college football is going to be professional football. I mean, it's moving at a speed that you and I didn't even think was going to happen.
No.
But we're here. And we had mentioned back, I don't know, last year sometime, that the future was going to be outside big money, corporations, individuals putting their money in to buy these teams, right, or to finance these teams.
Yep.
And so you sent me a clip, and I forget the gentleman's name, who is
I'm
ready.
sending it to Joe here just now.
He's ready to do that. So we saw with the Dave Portnoy thing and the Larry Ellison's wife ponying up, putting the money, buying a quarterback for $12 million, a high school quarterback for $12 million.
Who was a good quarterback, but
good.
But again,
he's
how
not
many guys
can't miss?
How many of these can't miss guys are miss guys? Like a lot. And like, how much are we taking into consideration program fit? How much are we taking into consideration with all these different things that go on, like system fit? Like, is he the right guy for what they want to run in that particular offense, right? In that particular conference, if you will. So I don't know.
I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of money. I mean, we look locally, right? And no disrespect, but look at DGB, right? Number one guy in the country, right? Will Nwaneri. A lot of people were saying he was the number one guy in the country. You and I had this discussion. I said he's not the number one guy in the state in my,
yeah, you told
rankings.
me that,
and
well in advance.
Yes, and it is what it is. So you have these, and I don't even know if amateur is the right word, but Dave Portnoy. I mean, you have fans.
He's a fan,
right? Who what do they know? You know what I mean?
He was very emotional about it, right?
Yes.
He got emotional.
And so I guess he saw a list and saw, oh, this is the number one guy. So I'm going to throw $12 million at this guy. So anyway, producer Joe tells us that we are ready to go.
All right.
So if you want to set it up.
Well, yeah, this is pretty self-explanatory. You just watch this and this is a great talking point because it hits on so many things we've talked about for almost a year now.
It's a phenomenal opportunity. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a number of schools selling their teams. And the reason for that.
To whom?
To folks like us. Like we're bidding on a couple teams, I can't tell you.
Wow.
But in essence, what we would do is buy 51% of the team. And, I mean, I think if you look at a bunch of these programs, they're making 50, 100 million off of their football program, off of their basketball program. So it's a way for universities, by the way, because under federal law, they've got to offer scholarships in all these different sports. So they've got to update their facilities. So one of the things they want to do is sort of say, okay, great. My football program makes 100 million. We'll sell 50%. That's 50 million. Do a 10 multiple on that, 15 multiple, that's 500, 750 million. That'll come for them to sort of fix different things at the university. So you're going to start seeing more of that. What the schools need is they need money for NIL, but you can't go out and raise money for NIL because that's not a deduction, right? So that if you're giving $1 million to Michigan and you can say, I want it to go to the sports program, that's great. But if you say I want it to go for NIL, then it's not a deduction. So that's the issue. I think it's phenomenal.
There you go. Billionaire, former Milwaukee Bucks owner. What's his name? Mark Lassery?
Yeah.
Lassery. Anyway, so be careful what you wish for.
Because you hear what he said, 51%.
Oh, yeah,
they want controlling interest.
They want,
right?
Yeah.
And so they're sharks.
They
and
see
they're going to get
opportunity,
involved
blood in
with
the
these.
water. Yep.
And so I do think, and it's really interesting because there's so many things to talk about this week, like the college football, selection, we missed getting to talk about that. But like Nick Saban sat, and you could tell he was very upset, and he tried to be as professional as he could be. Clearly he's biased. But when they were left out, when you have teams when you have teams like Alabama being left out, that quite frankly, they have 3 losses. That there's an easy understanding that there's a reason why they're not there.
Right.
But on the flip side, you have other teams that beat one team with the winning record that are in it, right?
No, how do you think Alabama would match up against Indiana?
Right. So like people, the one thing that people kept saying, well, they lost to Vanderbilt and they lost to Oklahoma. And I said, okay,
pretty good.
Here's the thing. How about Vanderbilt and Oklahoma playing in the ACC?
There you go.
What would their record be? Probably 8-9 wins. So interesting. But one of the things that Nick Saban said, and when I was sitting there, I sat back. I was like, well, yep, because you could tell he was pissed and he was not happy about what happened.
Right.
And he essentially started going down 2 lines. And one line was, well, then you shouldn't schedule any tough games. The
Correct.
conferences should align it so they can basically put teams in and let shush them through the season. Give them a clear pathway to get into the be one of the four of the 12 teams in there, and so the conference gets more money. But on the flip side from that, the other thing that they can do is they're going to just take their stuff and just go home, and they're going to start their own league, and it's going to be a 70-team league that these guys like he's talking about are going to invest in.
No,
right?
they're
already talking about. They're already having meetings about this. The SEC and Big Ten have tried to resist, but he hit on a very salient point, and that is, what are you going to do with these other sports that are drags on your economics of your program?
That's their
and
end.
That's their end.
Yep.
That is the end. And so here's the thing. And I don't know so much on the federally mandated, because they don't mandate that you have to do, but with Title IX, there has to be commensurate sports for females. So the females are going to be covered. But if they take this league and move it outside the purview of NCAA, then it's done.
Yeah.
It's its own thing, right? We've
and
talked
that
about
has
this.
A ripple effect.
There's no federal law that stipulates that the NFL has to have a female league. That doesn't work that way. Right? The NBA has a WNBA that it owns, but it's not mandated. There's no, professional softball league associated with MLB. The reason being is they're private entities that do this. And now these are going to be public universities that have private teams that play for them. Representing them. And so I think people struggle to understand that that's going to happen, right? At some level,
which we talked about last year.
And people were laughed about it and all that. But the thing is you can read, okay, University of Missouri just doubled their ticket prices, okay, for their season ticket holders. Okay, great. And the reason they're doing that is because they have to raise money. They are behind the 8 ball when it comes to the funds that are going to pay for not only the football players getting paid next year, but all the other programs that they are now losing that revenue that they have to pay the football players with. So they're scrambling, right? But if you listen to the AD, Veach, I think his name is, he talks explicitly about how football is the focus, right? And the reason being is
it's the money.
It's the only one that ties into the money, right? Yep. And so that money is really good for them, and it helps, it keeps their jobs. It keeps the money flowing through the university, right? There's a lot of things that it does, and they have some big commitments with a brand new stadium addition. All those things are going on. And, like to his point about NIL, the schools would love that money be donated to them so they can use it for, funding scholarships, funding building capital programs, all that. On the flip side, the people that are on these collectives, they want the money to go directly to the athlete because they have more control, because they are the ones that are going to be mad when they see a kid leave, right?
Yeah.
But again, how many people are going to give money only to a kid that's a can't miss kid who doesn't do great, or he just up and leaves the next year, right? So I do think, there's going to be some teeth, I think, a little bit when they start getting their salaries, if you will, through the university. There's going to be tie-ins because they're not called national letter of intent anymore.
Right.
And so it's like a financial agreement. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all unfolds. But I think we are in the middle of, you start making teams and conferences upset, like the power conferences, going back to, and this is a little bit old news, but how they selected, I thought it was very interesting listening to Ward Manuels, the guy's name is the AD for Michigan, and he's on there, and rightfully so. Like, okay, you have ADs involved, but the problem is they don't have a lot of football guys on there. And with all due respect, one of them is
you can tell
they have four former coaches on the selection committee. They have 2 females who have both never played football, right? One's an AD, one's a sports writer.
Contact does that.
and then they have a bunch of people that are outside of the game that are ADs, meaning like they're not actually in the game. And the 4 coaches are all older coaches who are not. I love Gary Pinkel, but he is not in touch with what's going on today's game. It's changed since he's gotten out. It has changed. That doesn't mean he doesn't know the game. But my reason for bringing it up is he says Ward Veach or no, excuse me, Ward Manuel makes a comment about how they watched the game when Clemson and SMU were playing.
Right.
And he made the observation that they didn't give up and they fought hard to the end. But the glaring thing that he neglected to say was the only reason that happened was Clemson's running back went out.
Right.
He was out of the game.
Yeah.
So the dynamic of the game changed. But then you have these people that are
So
supposed experts.
Right, but he's not even fan level to
That's
realize
my point.
that. Yeah,
Like,
so he's not even a
point.
fan watching that.
He's watching this, and it's like, dude, you're at college football games, and you run, and he played college football, but he's glad handing and moving around the sidelines and trying to get money, right? And being a dignitary.
Yep.
So, you have a sports writer, you have someone else that hasn't played the game,
Lord.
right? So you start looking at this and saying, no wonder they don't get it right. And heaven forbid they have to make a tough decision, and someone's always going to be upset. I get that,
right?
But when you listen to them talk about their rationale, you start to say, well, wait a second, so all of you guys were there watching this game together, and that was the consensus. And it sounds like some of the football guys were pushing back, but when you have people that have outside interest, like, in all reality, why wouldn't it be all football coaches and former players, right? There's two former players, Will Shields and I'm trying to think someone else, Randall McDaniel, I think, are the two former players. But the problem is,
I'm curious as to how they came up with this group of people.
Interesting. Yeah. Very interesting. Like, when I started researching it, I'm like, wow, this is not what I would think would be.
There's people out there that you would automatically think they could. Well, that guy would be a good guy. But these people that you're all mentioning, I'm like,
it's an interesting group.
Yeah. A hodgepodge.
It's a hodgepodge. So again, I think there's a lot to be, but someone's probably by design, right? There's a lot to be desired because controversy, all those things. But what it will do is those conferences are going to start getting upset, the ones that are in control, right. And they're going to get upset, and they're going to take their ball, and they're going to go home.
Yeah, especially when you have these billionaires coming and buying the teams, right? Because they're not going to put up with that. And it was fascinating, and I hope everybody caught what that gentleman who used to own the Milwaukee Bucks said. Right now, we are in negotiation with buying two teams.
Mm-hmm.
Those words. When he said that, I was like,
multiples.
Yeah,
like in business.
Yeah,
that's a big deal. That's big business.
It is
like
big
that
business.
Is big business.
He wouldn't be doing it for fun.
And they know there's recurring revenue. But like we talked about, let's say it's like a $3 billion total revenue in college football right now. I think it's somewhere in that range. I've heard and read reports where they think it's as high as 30 billion is if they maximize the model, which would then be bigger than the NBA, hockey, baseball, and the NFL.
So if you're buying these,
be bigger than all of them.
If you're buying these teams, you're not going to look at this stuff they got going on with this playoff system and agree to that, right? Especially if you buy Alabama or you buy, you're going to be like, what's this bunk, right? We're going to do our own thing, just like you said.
So they have this. There's a group that's it's like a super league, if you will. There's two competing groups that are going through it. So the SEC and the Big Ten met about 2 months ago, and then they're thinking they're going to do it on their own because I think they're trying to resist this. But the problem is they are not business people. The reason that they're doing $3 billion is by accident, right?
Right.
They've probably been taken advantage of by the schools, right? By the schools have been taken advantage by the news organizations or the broadcasting, right. There is definitely a different production value to the NFL than there is college football for the most part, right? They're not bad, but the NFL frames everything different because they are in control from top to bottom, right? They control their games differently than college does. You get these owners and these new owners, if you will, the Black Rocks and those guys, they are going to control the product, right? It is a product, and they're selling a product.
Top to bottom, they're going to control it.
And so you'll see more of an NFL level control and production. And so I know it sounds crazy talking about this stuff, but now how does that equate with kids that are that we're talking about, the high school kids? I mean,
Wow.
it is a monumental shift.
Yes.
Because you listen to scenarios. I'll see if I can send it to
And you know
Joe.
what it really does for the high school kids is it's going to increase. I mean, it's for years it's been, oh yeah, man, I'd love to go to college. I'd like to play ball and get my education paid for. Forget that, right?
No,
That's a whole different thing. So when you're in high school, you just showed up for years and years, and you were a good athlete, and you played well, and you'd get signed by a school. That's totally different.
correct.
You're going to have to make an investment, right? So that you can make that level of money that's going to be flying out there by billionaires owning college football teams.
Yep.
So it's a whole different thing. And back to like the fans, I mean, your sport is gone, right? If you're our age and you've grown up loving college football and loving the whole thing, the recruiting aspect, and you got these guys that you're rooting for and you're buying their jerseys that are on your team for 4 or 5 years, that's gone.
Just get the jersey with just numbers on it.
Right. Just get a number right, and then I guess it can have like something they can just put the name on, just removable name on the jersey. But I mean, it's just crazy. And think of it from that aspect. I mean, if you're going to be selling jerseys of guys and making money off of that, you have new talent coming in every year. You got there's that revenue that you're going to increase.
So Matt Rule, I was going to try and find it, but Matt Rule, who's a Nebraska head coach, was talking about, and this is, we alluded to this on the last show, but didn't go into a ton of detail. But essentially, he was talking about how they've mandated, and legislated no walk-ons, right? And that program is a very proud program. Nebraska had their black shirts, the whole walk-on lure. And they've had guys that ended up being unbelievable athletes and assets to their team. And so he said that, here's the problem. I have 150 guys on my team, right? 150 carrying about 150. I've heard Alabama's like 160. There are roster limits, before school starts, and then they open those up when school gets going. But, when they're in training camp, there's a smaller number. But that's where the preferred walk-on and all that stuff comes in. But you have these teams that are now 150 guys. Now they're cutting down to 105. Okay. Everybody's on scholarship. So that's 45 guys that now have been released into, and some of those guys being released, some guys are transitioning to scholarships. Some guys are being released from scholarships, right? Some guys are graduating. So let's just call it a wash of 40 guys that they're going to release into the transfer portal. Now multiply that by 132 teams, right? So that's going on all over the world, of football.
Right.
And what's happening is you and I were like, okay, great. This class of 2026 and 2025, they're pretty lucky because the COVID, pushback guys, they had the extra year. They're finally out. Like those 6-year guys are finally done this year. So it's going to free some numbers up. Well, what it's going to do is going to take that, let's just call it 4,000 people is going to shift them, whatever it is, throughout the entire system, right? And then you get to a situation where that's going to push down to FCS, Division II, and then it's going to shift down. And what's crazy is, though, you see kids in the FCS level, like if they have good film, like these teams are just snatching them up. And they're snatching them up for what? For depth, not necessarily to come in and start and play.
Right.
But if you're a kid at, let's say, a Missouri Valley school, and he gets snatched up, and now he's making, $150,000, from the school at Iowa State or Illinois.
That just happened, by the way.
Right. Like, what does it matter? Like even if you are a backup.
Right. No,
right.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, and so
let me ask you this question. Could we conceivably, if you have like these guys buying teams, could you see reach a point to where guys don't graduate?
Oh, I don't know that school. I think school would become obsolete. Not obsolete, but it won't be part of.
It won't be part of the deal, right?
Well,
if this is their team, I mean, if they break away from the NCAA, right? Could somebody just be like, it's professional football at that point? And could it just be like they're on the Chiefs? They're there for however long they're willing to pay them. Could college football conceivably reach that point.
I mean, anything's possible, right?
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
because
I mean,
like-
we're talking about like wholesale changes of stuff.
because the NCAA is becoming less relevant by
Yes.
the day. And so in football,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
now the tournament sports, all that, it's still very viable and it does. But this is not a tournament that they're doing. A tournament would have been top, 24 teams, and then they play in, right, or top 40 team, whatever, and then they play to find a champion.
Yeah.
But the reason why they had themselves strung up for so long on this is they have a revenue model for all the schools making all this money off the bowl games and the TV rights and all that from basically all of December through the national championship. And so they got themselves in a situation where they're probably like there's no poison pill for them to prevent someone from coming in and basically remodeling the whole thing, right?
That's,
and I
that's
think
exactly what I'm talking
and I
about.
think
yeah.
that's what's going to happen. And so the fallacy of student athlete left the building a long time ago, which
Mhm.
I am a proponent. You want to get to school, you got to get to college and do the best you can. But the reality of it is, not every kid graduates from college that went there that was a student athlete. There's a lot of emphasis put on it. The SEC pays money for kids to get good grades. Like they get
Schools like
$5,000 if-
Mizzou, yeah, do
$5
all they
grand.
can to get kids to do that.
But on the flip side, let's be truthful. How much follow-up is there once you leave the campus and you're on that team? There's very little follow-up, just like as there would be with a professional team.
Correct.
There's like, okay, well, you're not our problem anymore, right? They're on the hook for any injuries that you might have. They're on the hook for a few other things. But other than that, like it's pretty much like that, those ties are severed. You're now someone that they're going to ask for money from as an alumnus, So
Oh yeah.
like, so to me, that whole fallacy of the student athlete, was created in Kansas City when the NCAA was headed up, was headquartered there. It was very specific. It was to avoid work comp and get them, this status, right?
And it also appealed to the fans.
Oh, yeah.
Here you got these student athletes, these guys that are, love of the game and going to get an education, playing for state U, with the love state. I mean, it was really marketed well. That's all out the window.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm talking about. Because if you're a Mizzou fan, man, the changes are huge.
Really, yes.
As you alluded to in the beginning of the show. Think about it. You don't even, I mean, who's your quarterback?
Right.
Right.
I mean,
they lost.
All those
they lost.
all those haters on the Brady Cook would rue the day,
I told them.
Hey, think of this. If Brady Cook did not play against Army in that bowl game,
oh yeah,
he would be an extra year this year. He still would have eligibility. That's why he burned his eligibility that year in the bowl game.
And as I was having a conversation with some Mizzou fans, that whole true son thing, Brady Cook was one of the last ones, most likely, who really bought into that and loved Mizzou and wanted to be there for his entire
He wasn't
career.
a mercenary.
No, he wasn't a mercenary because he had his opportunities.
Oh, he did.
Right. I mean, I guess we can say that now.
Yeah, he had plenty of opportunities, just like any of these Division I high level guys. They all have opportunities,
and most guys would have taken it.
Yeah, and I think, and
think about where you would have been this year without him.
Because he didn't. There's your coaches getting paid more money at the University of Missouri. There's new things going on at the the stadium. There's support that's like they've never seen, and so but they have like. I don't think Mizzou's in a unique situation right now.
Not at all.
But
it's
they are behind the eight ball. You start looking at the number of guys they lost. Lacey yesterday, and that was a very big surprise. I think.
Yep.
They had him touted to be a guy, but the dangerous thing is you play a kid 5 games as a freshman.
He's already at South Carolina, by the way.
Is that where he's at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what we're kind of talking about. It's like I'm in the portal. Hey, now I'm that's where he's from.
Yeah.
But still, it's
tough, man, because
whiplash off of this.
There's so many kids that are being told right now that they don't have a spot. That's the other thing that people don't know, right, or really think about. Like they see a kid entering the transfer portal. There's 2 reasons why they're entering. There's no room for them on the team. They've been told that they don't have room for them, or they're going under their own power.
Yeah.
not, and
No, and we both see guys enter in the transfer portal, and you say, "What are you doing?"
mhm.
You know, it's just stick it out. Because even if you're part of that, because there's guys who have entered the portal that we both know, and it's like you're not. I don't know where you think you're going to go. You know, you were in a good situation. There are guys who are leaving, who are transferring out from D1, D1, Big 10, Big 12 schools, and I'm like, where do you think you're going to land? You haven't done anything yet. What do you think the
I think that's
demand
the
is? What do you
hardest
think the
thing.
market is for you?
Like a player, unnamed Big 10 university school,
Mm-hmm.
talking with his dad. And I said, I'd like to see some of his footage, his game film he played,
Yeah.
and practice. And I mean, it was a day later. Oh yeah, I'll get you some stuff, because kids will screen record stuff. Some of the phone it won't let you, and then guys, the old trick is people put on the film, they film themselves. They have their video, right?
Right.
They want a video of themselves, which is crazy because I get that you don't want to put that stuff out in season.
Mm-hmm.
But once that's happened,
you
should. The kids should be able to have some footage of
Absolutely.
themselves performing, right? And again, these are the predatory behaviors that leave kids locked in and maybe screw them over a little bit. So, the dad, he wrote me, he's like, oh, they locked out practice. You can't look at any more practice film.
Yeah, that's wrong.
Right. And so why are they doing that?
Trying to hold you.
They know. Right. Yeah. And so, and I think there's just so much to all of the intricacies, and I respect the side of the coaches where there's no loyalty and you're trying to develop stuff and you build this relationship and a kid takes off. I respect that. That's hard. It's probably really hard for those guys, but at the same time, the game created this environment. Mm-hmm. This is not an accident. The pendulum has now swung back violently to the other side, and it has not been on this side hardly ever.
Not that I can remember ever. Right.
So
this is why it's all wild.
That's why it's wild. And I think that's the ultimate goal here is
jailbreak.
Yeah. And so it's funny, as someone who's got, kids that we train right now
mm-hmm.
that are going through this. And like we're talking to a lot of the kids that are 2026 parents and 2027,
right.
It's not easy. It's not going to be easy. And there's a lot of dust that needs to settle to figure out. And so, what you and I know is the kids that get early offers, like early in their class, and if they keep progressing, and we know there's kids that'll get early offers that don't progress and they still make it through the system somehow, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Because someone bought off and gave them a bunch of stars, and now that's a validating point.
Correct. Yeah. Well, you say they're buying stars, they're buying rankings, they're buying
something.
And what's funny is, and you see those guys some of these guys who get the early offers to the Big 12, Big 10, SEC schools. And then you look come signing day, recently, and you're like, they're going to SEMO. Okay. That shows that you haven't continued on your progression and your trajectory. You haven't continued to get better. Right. But that was a placeholder, that early offer, in the hopes, because you had the potential, you might continue to be that guy and get better. A lot of guys peak sophomore year of high school, and it happens all the time. But now the recruiting is just going to get more and more brutal. I mean, it's brutal now, right? The biggest takeaway I have from signing day 2025 is that the local colleges in the state and region are going to get really good because they're signing guys. They've signed guys who in years past Mizzou would have loved to have had, right?
Yep.
There are guys going to Missouri State and guys going to Lindenwood. Mizzou in years past would have loved to have had those guys,
right?
But the way that the system is now, they've trickled down, right? I mean, look at Truman State. I see guys there, and it's like, man, how long are they going to be there?
Yeah, right.
Northwest Missouri State. I mean, I'm seeing these guys sign with these schools, and I'm like, I wonder how long they're going to be there.
Well, that's the thing, is there's the ability to rise and move through the ranks has never been more fluid, right? So you got receiver, you're talking about SEMO. Tristan Smith is a receiver. Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
Clemson. Trey Bell was at Parkway West, and now he's at Lindenwood.
Now he went
at Iowa State, right?
Yeah.
And so, you look at that, you see, but I will tell you, like I hear it on both ends, right? So I talk to NFL guys, like the scouts, and it's like, there's certain kids we'll talk about and have conversations where they're just trying to get their bearings on people because they're doing their research.
Which, by the way, NFL scouts do talk about high school kids.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They're looking. Just to FYI.
Oh, they want to know.
Oh,
They definitely get their ideas of kids early on, and it's interesting.
They'll say to me and you, "Hey, who are some guys?"
Yeah, who should we be looking at, right? And which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
So because there's a whole layer to get through.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the scouts had told me, he's like, oh man, there's a kid from a regional FCS school, in the Midwest here, who decided to come out. And he's like, I really wish he just would have stayed where he was at.
Yep.
And the reason being is knowing that, okay, yes, he's not, because conventional wisdom is we'll just level up and go see how you do at Mizzou, Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin. There's so many unknowns, and that agent, that scout knows that you and I know it. That, like, the agents they don't really care because it's a transaction for them, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm thinking more long term. I want it to be multiple transactions, not a single transaction, right? So, the unfortunate truth is like now that young man is going to go somewhere and he may dominate, but he also might be the number 3 somewhere where he was the number 1 where he was at, and he could be seen. And he probably would have a better story to tell at that lower level and being dominant.
And you can still make it to the league. Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
You got agents and guys, going after him because
you see a lot of guys
and scouts looking at him because, the agents want to get to him because they think he's going to be an NFL guy. Right. So they want to get their hooks in. The scout doesn't care about that stuff. No. They care about like seeing that person mature and seeing him in different scenarios. And yeah, sure, going and winning a spot at a Power 5 school will be excellent. But we all know that sometimes the stuff does not go in your favor. It just doesn't.
No, it's interesting. College football is really become like minor league baseball system, where you start out at what is it, like A ball, and then you're moving your way up. And I mean, that's it. It used to be back in the day, you'd sign with a school and it's okay, this is my lot in life. This is what I did. I'm here for the next 4 or 5 years, and I really don't have much options, so I got to make it work.
Right.
It isn't that way anymore.
Well, and so like if you're a high school kid, what's your strategy to get noticed? Well, I think your strategy to get noticed is to be the best player you can possibly be, right? Working on your body, working on your speed, your movement patterns, working on your skills, right? Don't just think because you can catch a ball or throw a ball that's going to get you by, because it's not.
A lot of those guys signed with some lower level D2 schools. Yeah.
Learn the game. Learn it at a higher level. Get around people who can teach you the game, that don't just sit there and go, yeah, oh, good job when you're being trained, who actually give you feedback and teach you how and why, what the failure modes are. That's what you need to be doing. And then I got to tell you, if you look at this market and what's going on, you need to be on the field sooner rather than later. They're not waiting for projects to emerge junior and senior year. I'm sorry. That is just going to be how it works.
They're not going to keep you there, right? and hope that by your redshirt junior year you're going to be a guy.
Yeah,
that's
done.
That's
if they don't find out about you till your senior year, they're certainly not going to have room for you to come be a project. Right? There's no walk-ons anymore. Like they got to pay you to be there. So like they have to organize their rosters accordingly.
Well, this is why it's more important than ever, right? That you don't fall in love with a particular school. You got to go with who loves you and who's going to give you the opportunity, because don't look down on schools like, oh man, I don't have these options, right? Because a lot of guys like to brag or this, or they'll get big offers early and then they dry up. Go where you can go, where you can get on the field and do well, because you're not there. It's the whole thing and the whole process for these guys going into the smaller schools. You're just auditioning, right? The whole thing is just you're auditioning for that next level. I mean, it's really changed. You're not at State U and hopefully by my junior redshirt year I'm going to be a guy. You're at this school. It's very mercenary. You're at this school so that I can make this hop to this school, and then if I do well at this school, then maybe these people. I mean, that's the whole thing. Totally
And
changed the game.
you go blowing coaches off, you would do that at your own peril, because I'll give you
They
an
talk.
example. You don't know where they're going to end up, right? So one of our guys, the guy that we coached and trained, who's now in college, we have, a lot of them in the college ranks right now that are kids that we grew up in our program. I would say that selfishly that separates us from everybody else in town that's trying to do what we do, because guess what? We have connections that are very different than just knowing guys that have been recruiting the region for years.
I was going to say, not just town, the state and region.
Yeah, these guys are, So we'll give you a great example. One of our coaches was coaching at he's been at a bunch of FCS schools, been a bunch of FBS schools, Big 12. And then last year he was at Samford University down in Alabama. Calls me the other day or texts me 2 days ago, Florida State. So you're the guy big timing him when he's at a smaller school.
Yeah.
And he was on you, was starting to build a relationship, and you were too good to build a relationship. Well, when he leaves, do you think he forgets the names of people he met along the way? Right? That's a big jump, right?
Yeah.
But it's not a big jump because he's been at other big schools. These guys move around, and he's getting sharp. Like, he is getting advice to go back and work on pass game coordinator. He's going to go get advice to be run game coordinator. He's filling out his coaching resume, because someday he's going to be a coordinator and a head coach, right? But right now, he's the guy recruiting you, okay? So do you think that a guy I talked to a guy at Stanford yesterday and a guy at Florida State, two ends of the spectrum as far as like where they're located, right? And do you think they're interested in kids in St. Louis, Missouri? You better believe they are. And guess what? They call, they want to know names, they want intel on certain kids they've heard about, right? That's where being present and having a good work ethic and being, known, right? Like, I'm not giving a name of a bunch of kids that I do not trust that they're going to be able to even compete at that level, one, but they're also got to back up what I think they can do, right? And so you're not going to give names. You're not going to write reports on guys that
For a prize.
Yeah, right. Like
no, yeah, not on guys that aren't guys.
Yeah, but you're going to give an honest appraisal of what they are and what they do.
Yeah, what their
ceiling is.
I'm not one of those places where they're going to like, hey, pay me this amount of money and I'll write you a blurb that's a word salad, just so that I can sell you and your parents.
And so but see, that's the thing, is that's not how it's done. College coaches are not worried about that stuff.
Not at all.
They want the hand-to-hand. They want the personal relationship. They want to have a professional scout give them an analysis of what they
people
see,
who know what they trust,
and they're going to have off the book conversation with guys and say, "Hey, who do you guys have in your program?"
Yep.
Right. And for those level of schools, one for Stanford, they better be a good student on top of it, right? I mean, you got to be a good student at all of them to get into these universities, but you can't and pass the basic threshold to get in. But the Vanderbilts and the Northwesterns and the Stanfords, you better be a really good athlete and a really good student. So, but yeah, I think at your own peril, ignore coaches, right?
Treat everybody the same.
Is
the best advice
100%.
Treat everybody as if they're the head coach at Alabama.
100%.
It's not going to hurt you one bit. It's only going to help you. And like you said, I mean, really, and we've been doing this a long time. It's really who you know and the networking. And even if those people don't use you or know you, they talk, the coaches talk, and they're gonna be like, hey, I know this guy, man, he's a great kid. He's a great guy. Look at this kid. We can't use him, but you might. That happens
all the time at Lindenwood, at the camp, at mega camp. You will see guys talking to each other. Like, there'll be a coach who goes, hey, you need to check this kid out. He's not our level. You need to go check him out, right? Like, hey, great kid. Already kind of vetted him. Right. It's very clear that we're not going to get him, so you need to look at him.
Exactly.
And then that can go both ways. That can also be a school that's a little bit higher level. It's like, hey, he's probably not what we need. Perfect for you guys.
Happens all the time.
Right? But I do think it's interesting. Like, each year at the Lindenwood Mega Camp, you see, I love talking to all the young coaches and getting to see guys. But from year to year, some guys are in the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, because some of those guys just love where they're at. That's what they're going to do. but 9 times out of 10, they're in a different shirt the next year.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, like because they're climbing, right? And they're working and learning different things at different programs. And I think it's a really good thing for kids to understand the game they're playing, and parents understand, like, this isn't I just go play high school football anymore,
Not anymore.
and then put up
Well,
my tape and then
right.
think I'm going to get recruited.
Well,
it does not work that way.
It's really not a game anymore.
It's a profession.
It's a profession, correct? And so you need to treat it as that. You can't just, if you want to play the game, if you want to be in the football profession, you have to grow up. You can't. There's time to be a kid, and then there's time to not. And so hopefully you listen to your parents who tell you that. But with this, you're definitely gonna. Speaking of coaching changes and people moving, we know some of the people that are on the UNLV staff.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard anything about them moving with Barry to Purdue?
Yeah, they have not announced all of it, but one would think that Michael Shear would be a candidate to be the D coordinator. Brennan Marion, I would think he would probably bring him along but I think the tough thing is they're still playing their bowl game.
Right.
And so, I think that you have the respect for,
right.
You don't want to just leave those guys. I think that's the kind of guy Barry Odom is. I mean, so it's a great hire for Purdue.
Oh, absolutely. Has he announced anybody? I wanted to talk about that too.
I have not heard
nobody on the staff. Yeah, which is
I actually was just looking at it before. There's not. They pulled the money together. He's going to have more money to spend on the guys, and
yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see because you got a guy like Corey Patterson that was there. Where's he going to end up? You know what I mean? Guys like that have St. Louis ties that say he stays close and he ends up at Mizzou or he ends up in Iowa.
Have an impact.
Like that. Those are monumental shifts within that staff. And let's just say he ends up in Kentucky.
Yeah.
You don't think that their recruiting presence in St. Louis would increase?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, look at Nebraska. Look at Jamar Mosey going to Nebraska. Look at the difference that that's making. Jamar Mosey, who's been on the show, was a great guest. Was in his car for when we interviewed him. I mean, look at what he's bringing up there from the Kansas City area.
Yep. So that happens, right? And then that's because there's relationships and trust, and people know each other and they talk. But just to think that you're just going to show up and play a little high school football, and if you're really that good, they're going to find you. It's evolved, and it's evolving faster than what you think it's evolving. And that's not to scare anybody. That's just to, hey, if you think you're going to go get paid right out of the gate, okay? Like Brady Cook did not go through this, right? He experienced it on the tail end, and this is a totally different experience than what he and his parents went through, right? And so now the parents of the kids that are 2026s are going to be in a totally different scenario than what the 2025 families are in right now. Like totally different, because the money will be flowing at that point, and the actual, you're going to see who's paying what and how they pay it out. I mean, it is going to be, but do you think they want to pay a high school kid that's not ready? No, because the odds are they're going to come in and not be ready, and then they're going to try and leave once they get ready, and then that's money wasted. So it's a really tough situation, which is going to push a lot of really good high school football players down to the next level.
Right. But fear not on that, because like I said, there's guys who you're going to see them, if you go there and do it's a constant now, right? You don't just go there and I'm at this school and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do. Man, if you want to, you can hop, right? You should look at this. And this is what I would advise everybody to do. Look at it as, this is my first job, right? And I want to get a promotion.
Mm-hmm.
You should think that anyway, because you want to see the field and you want to excel. But man, opportunity is yours. You have more opportunity if you're good enough to play college football than ever before.
Yep.
And to get paid at it as well. So put in that work, keep building, have a plan. And a lot of good things ahead for everybody. Did we get a chance to talk about signing day at all? Signing day came out, the all-state selections, all metro selections came out.
There's always so much.
There's so much going on, and we're running.
with kids to get left off those lists.
It's crazy, and do not feel bad if you were left off that list, okay? And especially, and I'll just say it right now, and I don't want to upset anybody, but they don't see everybody, right? It's who they know is being recruited, who a fellow friend who's a coach says, "Hey, man, vote for my kid. This kid was really good. This
Right.
is really good." Because I look at it and I just like, oh, that's interesting, and that's it.
Well,
Right?
if you're on a bad team, it's really hard to be considered for all state because you see the numbers of kids on the teams that win state or state semi or quarterfinalists. They're all over that team.
Or if you're on a good team and you're a good player and you're deserving, but there's all these other players, just like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we got to have the quarterback there. He won a state championship. Well, we got to have this lineman is getting heavily recruited. Right. That's how that works. And you can put it on your resume for coaches. Looks good, but they're like, because I can't tell you the number of guys who didn't win all state or all metro who went and had very successful college careers and then on to the NFL.
100%.
So just, and I know people get upset, and I've been getting a bunch of DMs and stuff.
And then the tough thing is there's a lot of politics, obviously, in it.
Huge
right?
amount
There's
of
just,
politics.
and that's between the coaches, and there's, some guys that have more power than others and how they vote and then who's working backroom deals. I mean, that's anytime you get a group of people together voting on something like that, like they're going to have issues, right?
Yeah,
I mean, so
subjective.
So it is very, and so to your point, they don't get to see everybody, and
right.
It's very, very hard when kids are deserving of it, and you look statistically.
Oh, without question. Or like me, I see all the guys.
Right, you're at the game. Right?
I'm on a committee and vote. My vote didn't matter, right? Somebody else got it, and I'm questioning why myself, right? I'm like, well, how can this be that this? And,
well, could you make that argument with the Heisman? Right. I mean, there's
absolutely.
a lot of people that believe Ashton Genty should have won. He broke a 37-year-old rushing record.
He wasn't the name,
and he's not from a big market.
Correct. Wasn't the name, wasn't from the big market. In high school, a lot of times they're like, well, this guy's a senior, so we're going to go ahead and give him this. Right. The other guy, but really, so you expect somebody to replicate 3,500 yards and 59, 60 touchdowns their senior year? Why not reward them when they're a junior or a sophomore?
It's just hard because, again, but the parents and the players, and I'm sure sometimes the coaches are really upset with it, right, when they don't get their way with on the voting. But it is very hard to watch because I think a lot of kids really want to have that mark, and they know that recognition, and But I would say, look, if that didn't happen and you're still getting to go play college football, laugh, the joke's on them, right? You're still, because there are kids. Every once in a while, I see the name. I'm like, well, I need to look up and see who that is. And then I, of course, do the huddle, and I'm like, man, someone was really lobbying for this because I don't see it, right?
Yeah.
Like the body of work is what, and so.
Right. Well, everybody loves the recognition. People, they're like, anonymous people online who will put together like nice little edits of top 10 this kid, and the kids love it, and they'll chase after that.
Yeah.
Got to get out of that mindset. It's a business now, so the glory will be you getting in a good school, getting paid, and going as far as you can in the sport.
Yep.
That's it. So much more we could talk about, but we got to get out of here. We got to make way. Anything you want to talk about? Anything you want to say?
No, I would just say, just a reminder, we have football skills training at Elite's going to start Sunday, January 5th. We'll be full tilt. Right now we got the private training and skill development going, in that world, a lot of private stuff. And then we have the performance training and our lifting. So then our combine would be February 17th for the middle school, and then March 8th for the high school. So
the Big Daddy, the one.
Those are registering now. I mean, you should start to be working out again and running, starting to work towards that. So you have a couple months to actually get ready for it.
It's going to be combine and camp season coming up.
It's crazy.
The only ones I can recommend is Elite and KC Varsity, which, by the way, you probably saw KC Varsity linemen going to be doing. They're going to pad up.
Yes,
which I think is a good idea. Which I think is a good idea because you know how it gets. So
it's a little dicey.
Correct. So that we're going to see how that goes. So that's down the line.
Now they'll just make sure that everybody can get access to their pads and all that stuff.
Correct.
Right? And you'll have one kid show up without his helmet, and that happens at Lindenwood every year.
Every year,
one or two kids show up and they don't have their stuff.
Every year. Well, it's linemen, so
Well, I forgot my shoes. Well, you're going to run barefoot,
right? Exactly. You know what? And we've actually seen it, and I've actually seen it through Elite, We're luckily you have some coaches got some big feet.
Oh yeah,
for some linemen.
Size 18.
Yeah, right, exactly. Some coaches had to like help them out a little bit.
Yep.
So anyway, everybody have a very Merry Christmas and a New Year. You'll hear from us soon. Appreciate everybody as always checking us out. Make sure that you go follow us on our socials there. Producer Joe has it. JP Rock MO X. JP Rock's got you Instagram.
Elite Football on X and Elite Football Academy on Instagram.
Football360show.com for everything. Football 360 Show. Check us out on Apple as well as Spotify. Hear the podcast. Go to our YouTube. If you're not watching already, like, share, tell your friends, tell your families, tell Santa Claus, put it on it's on our wish list. So do that for us. That would be your gift to us. All right. We appreciate it. Happy Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, all the happy holidays, all that good stuff. And we will talk to you soon. See ya.